Good afternoon and welcome back to the afternoon session on Wednesday for the Texas State of Enrollment Conference. I'm going to wait about a minute as folks join us. All right, I am going to go ahead and get us started this afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I think we're probably still going to have some people trickling in. My name is Carla Martinez, and I work at Every Texan, and we're really proud and glad to be co-hosting this conference with our partners at Young Invincibles and the Texas Association of Community Health Centers. Next slide, please. We would like to thank you for helping us make this a language accessible space. This conference and this webinar will be simultaneously interpreted to Spanish. I invite you to go ahead and select your preferred language with me to make sure that you can get the full audio for this presentation. So on your webinar, if you are on a laptop, it's going to ask you to select a little globe icon that says interpretation. When you click on that, you can then select your preferred language between English or Spanish. You must select a language, even if you're bilingual, to make sure that you can hear the full audio. I'm now going to give those same instructions in Spanish. Buenas tardes, gracias por estar con nosotros esta tarde. Esta sesión y toda la conferencia está interpretada a español. Para seleccionar su idioma preferido, por favor, hazle clic al icono de globito que dice interpretación y de allí puede seleccionar su idioma preferido. Debe de seleccionar un idioma, aunque sea bilingüe, para asegurar que pueda escuchar todo el audio. If you are on a tablet or an iPhone, you will need to click on the little three buttons that say more o más to select the interpretation and then your preferred language. Si está en un celular o una tableta, tendrá que seleccionar los tres puntitos donde dice more o más y luego de ahí seleccionar interpretación y su idioma preferido. Next slide, please. This webinar is, we are in webinar mode, so all attendees are muted and currently in listen-only mode. We invite you to visit our conference website to view speaker bios, and all of these sessions will be recorded and you will be able to view them on the website. So the ones from yesterday are actually already up there. If you stick around to the end of this session, we are going to have a quick little Zoom poll and a raffle for a chance to win a gift card. So make sure that you do stay until the end. We have experts joining us today to give you some really good information. I invite you to use the Q&A icon on your screen so that you can enter your questions, and I'll stop our presenters periodically to make sure that we get to those as we go along. Next slide, please. So this is our overall schedule for the conference. So we are in the Wednesday afternoon session. Tomorrow we will have another session in the morning at 10:30 and tomorrow afternoon. We're also going to have some extra activities that are optional after our last session tomorrow, which we'll give you more details about. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm actually going to be your moderator for this session today, and I am really excited to have two experts joining us today. We are going to have Amy Cuellar from Feeding Texas and Leyda Valdez joining us from the North Texas Food Bank. Amy and Leyda are experts in the Your Texas Benefits application. So the Your Texas Benefits portal, you might know, it's where you can go help people enroll in our state programs, including Texas Medicaid and SNAP. Amy has a wealth of knowledge. You can read her bio on our website, and she's been doing this work for a really, really long time. And she's definitely who I go to whenever I have really complex technical questions about this. And Leyda Valdez joining us, you might remember from another session we had at our conference last year, where she gave us some really good tips and best practices on how to help folks with renewals. So I'm going to go ahead and ask to stop sharing this screen and invite Amy and Leyda to go ahead and take it over.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sorry, y'all.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get started. We're actually going live. And so what you will see is Leyda sharing her your TexasBenefits.com screen in a moment.
Can y'all see that?
Not yet.
I actually can see it on my end. Amy, are you having trouble with your internet by any chance?
Not that I know of.
Okay. But yes, I can see the screen on my end.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Yes, very good. Well, welcome everybody. We're excited to be here with you and talk a little bit about your TexasBenefits.com. We have a client today that we're going to be working with. This is the login page. We have, and I'll be honest with you, set up an account for our client Test. She is here today and wants to apply for SNAP and pregnant women's Medicaid. And so since we know she already has an online account, we have entered the username, and we are looking at this as if we are assisting her. Just so you know, we are certified case assistance navigators. And so we're working in that opportunity to share with you from that perspective. So she has just entered her password and we're going to log in. And sometimes you get a keystroke in there incorrectly. And so we're going to fix that. That happens, and hopefully we can get that going really easy. Uh-oh, might have a little complication.
I set this up before, Amy. I'm so sorry.
It is okay. Okay. Can you do a reset, Leyda?
Yes, I will stop sharing my screen for a second.
Okay, that is fine. What Leyda's getting ready to do is she is going to, as a certified case assistance navigator, and we're a level 3 community partner, we have the ability to reset your TexasBenefits.com passwords. That can also be accessed through calling 211, but she's taking care of this one. And one thing, when we do this, we never let a person see the screen because of when you do inquiry in the state portal, it's possible to pull up someone else's information. So she's hidden her screen momentarily till we can get this fixed. And by doing so, she's protecting the client's confidential information. It's interesting that when you're doing inquiry through the state portal, it's potentially possible if you enter a username, if someone has given you a username incorrectly, to get another client's information. So she's gone offline to momentarily fix that. And that's a very common thing that does occur. So while we're waiting on her to do that, Again, Tess is a young lady that is pregnant. She's going to be applying for SNAP and Medicaid. She works and it stays very busy. She works for Kroger and will be entering income and so forth for her. We often will talk to a client prior to doing application assistance with them and ask them to bring as many of the documents they'll need to apply with. And that would be including ID. Make sure she knows her social security number, because sometimes people don't remember that. And bring all the information such as proof of residence. And of course, we know that all SNAP recipients in Texas must live in Texas. Vacation timing in Texas doesn't account and doesn't allow you to get SNAP in Texas while you're here on vacation. So we've asked her to bring that and some pay stubs. Asked her to bring any unpaid medical bills, because it's a possibility she has some. And if you're applying for Medicaid and are eligible, it's possible that the agency can go back up to 3 months prior to the month of application to be able to look at covering the 3 months prior to the month of application. So that is often something we will tell people ahead of time. Pay stubs, at least 3 to 4 pay stubs is very helpful, because HHSC will need to have those to be able to budget your income and see if the eligibility for SNAP, and in this case, pregnant women's Medicaid, is met. So we have a lot of things going on that we want to educate the client on, and that's a major part of what we do. When we get our password reset, what we're talking to you about and sharing with you about the application, we do that with our clients. The main thing we want to do there is to educate them to feel comfortable with using your Texas benefits on their own. And so, okay, looks like we're moving forward. All right, and she has logged us in, and when I say us, she has logged Tess in, and at any rate, we are going to go ahead now, and remember, Tess has received benefits before. She's had her account. She has a message center there on her welcome page, and that is something we would encourage clients to make sure they're checking their message center. On the far right, or excuse me, on the right, just beside that is paperless settings, so that if you wanted to receive all your notifications as a client via email or text, that can prompt you, and you can set that up there. There's information there about your interviews that might be forthcoming, and information about your Medicaid and SHIP. And there's a wonderful opportunity here on the bottom left to find support services. And so there's a lot of information in your texasbenefits.com that can help someone in managing their own life and their account with the state. So that's always a wonderful thing to know about. And there's an interest list manager as well. Let's go ahead at this point. And remember, we've already kind of prepared this one for us to go on. So we've got this application started here just so we could simplify things. Of course, logging is always a challenge sometimes. Let's hit continue, and we'll go into our application. Okay. And we have marked on this particular application that the client is wanting to apply for SNAP, and that is a routine program for any adult. I will note that there's a placeholder there for TSAP, and that's for the elderly and disabled individuals. The indicator that would be everyone in the household is elderly and or disabled, and disabled individuals could be any age. So TSAP is a simplified application, and a few less pages, a lot less pages actually. And it allows an individual to potentially be determined eligible. And if eligible for TSAP, of course, 36-month eligibility is one of the best benefits about TSAP. But let's go on. Tess is actually young and pregnant. So let's marker for her Medicaid. And at this point, it's asking us, and remember, we are a community partner. And when we are helping someone, we are logged in under our community partner ID. And we mark, because we're assisting a client, that the person filling out this form is myself or people I live with. And that indicates what we are doing to help test apply for benefits. There's a lot of information here about being able to set up an authorized representative. There's also information about responsibilities related to Medicaid. There where the cursor is where you would enter if you wanted to name an authorized representative. And please let me note that something that's important to know, an authorized representative is someone that should know your life, your income situation, and be thoroughly aware of your case situation so they can give true and correct information. They are actually held responsible for the information they shared and can be prosecuted if they fraudulently assist you in getting benefits. So you want to make sure it's someone you really trust and they know their situation. The next box, we're not going to do an AR. She doesn't want an authorized rep. So we're going to indicate the information, the contact information for the head of household. And that is Test, and her last name's Account. We like to make things a little entertaining. So she is female and she is 23 years old. We've entered her date of birth. And of course, we want to make sure that that's always, I have a typing problem, so I keystroke it and make sure I've checked it. We would enter her SSN, Social Security number. And this is where it would go. And there is a visual so that you can turn on and view that to make sure you've entered it correctly, because it's very key and important. And then we want to indicate any email so that should you want to get email notifications, the agency's HHSC has it. And we do secondary validation there by typing it to make sure it's matching. Then we want to make sure we've entered a home phone number and a cell, which could be the same. Most people these days, their cell is their home phone, sometimes their only phone. And we have actually identified that Test lives in Plano. That's not too far from where I live. We've indicated the food bank address. So if you want to go look and meet Test, you won't find her. She's over at the food bank at North Texas Food Bank. We're just using that location for an address for Test. To keep her confidentiality safe. And we've got the zip code. And in this case, her mailing address and her home address are the same. If you had to mark yes, that it was different, then you would also enter your mailing address. And it would give a differentiation and you would enter both. And so, yeah. Leyda's marking that for us. And there are a lot of reasons that sometimes individuals would get their mail at a different address than their home. And so for safety, we want to oblige and help them. We also need to indicate what Tess wants her language of her letters to be. Whatever communication HHSC is sending her, she wants it in English. And there's options there for multiple languages, which makes it very convenient. And as we proceed, it asks what language does the client speak? And in this case, Tess is English speaking, but there's the options there. And just make a note that HHSC will routinely try and communicate via a translator if we identify that correctly for the client. And there's hundreds of different languages there that we might use. I work with Feeding Texas, and that's the Food Bank Association of Texas. And we have multiple different languages that we assist clients every month in different languages. So this is just an example of several there. All right, let's proceed. Now we're getting into, do we need an interpreter? And in this case, Tess does not. And it is a free service the state will provide. And then it asks about, would it be hard for you to get to the office? This is for a situation where HHSC is actually doing face-to-face interviews in their local office. And if it's difficult, they will work with you and do phone interviews. And so you mark if any of those situations would make it difficult for her to come to the office, and we've marked it yes. She works. It would be hard for her to get to the office when it's open. Also, if there was need for special equipment, that is marked there, and you could make a indication. Let's just show what it says if we have yes, Leyda. And you just identify what special equipment might be needed here. And I would say that if you were in a wheelchair, you might need wheelchair ramps, would be an example. You could type in there, if you were in a wheelchair, that would make it much easier for you to obtain. And it might make it a knowledge to the agency that a cubicle would not be maybe an effective place to hold the interview. So that's all very important. But at this point, Tess does not need any special equipment, and she can go to the office, but she's working. So we've indicated that she does not want to go to the office. So, and she doesn't need any help. Let's go back and change that to no on reasons, or they all do apply. Apologies. Now, one thing, let's show you. If you were Tess and she needed to pick somebody up and give them a ride, there is a way to save the application at this point and exit it and come back to it up to 30 days. It will remain there. So save and exit is a way to go out. If it's there on the bottom on the left, you can save the application partway through and go back and update it and finish it at another time. And we sometimes have that. Very often we get busy and then realize we've got to do something else. So saving and exiting and going back at another time is convenient. You just got to remember your username and your password. Let's go on to next. All right. Tess at this time is living all alone. And so at this point, if we had her living with someone else, she could add a person. And that's for people that she would be applying for benefits for. So note that if we had other people, we would indicate them here. And I'll give you a few examples. If you're applying for SNAP, and in almost any situation, there's always exceptions. If Tess were married, her husband has to be in the same household with her. And I note this because even if he wanted to eat his own food and cook his own meals, spouses have to be a part of the household. If Tess already had a child, then that child would also need to be in the household. Someone that you apply for and claim on your taxes. And then if you have an individual that is less than 22 and they are living with you and being cared for by Tess, she would also include them. So there's a lot of different situations there, but we just know at this case, Tess is a single person household, as well as she's pregnant. So we don't have to add anybody. So those are the required members. And if it were two sisters, that's up to them. If they decide to apply together, that's fine. If they want to apply separately, as long as they're both adults over 22, we're looking at, they can each apply separately for SNAP. There's a lot of eligibility that HHSC has to think about based on the federal guidelines. So there's some good tips there on the application that indicate what you have to require groups together.
Hey, Amy, can I pause you to ask a question or two?
Of course.
All right, so we've got two questions about addresses. The
Yes.
first is, can a person use a PO box for their address?
Excellent question. A person can use a PO box for a mailing address, but they can't use it as their home address because you can't live in a PO box. So yes, you can use it for mailing. And then you have to show us where you live. If you had a situation and you were homeless, you could be homeless and let the state know that. You could write a note and upload it with your application. And that would indicate a reason to not be in your a home address and only indicate the PO box. So PO boxes are used quite frequently for safety of mail. And yes, you can use it as a mailing address.
Perfect. And the next question was actually about how to handle situations for people that are homeless. So I appreciate you going ahead and covering that.
Well, and there's something else you can use for homeless. Sometimes homeless shelters will accept mail. And they would need to just tell the agency, and there's a place later in the application to say that you're homeless. And you would indicate whatever address, if a shelter's allowing them to get mail, or maybe a sister's allowing them to get mail at their address, you would put that as the mailing address. And as a very, very rarely used, HHSC can use a general delivery mail address as a mailing address, but that means the individual would have to go to the post office and claim mail just periodically because you don't have a box. You have to just go say, I'm test account and I need to see if I have any mail here in the general delivery box. And not all post offices have general delivery. So that's something I point out. They would need to ensure the post office they're wanting to use with the correct zip code actually offered that service.
Thank you, Amy. One other question, since right now you're talking, or right here, you're at the part about household and how to add people applying for benefits. Can people apply for Medicaid and CHIP if they don't have a social security number?
You know, that's an excellent question. They might be a part of a household and some people have SSNs, social security numbers, and some don't. That's okay. There are a few interesting programs available for individuals that might not be U.S. citizens or resident aliens, such as CHIP perinate, and women that are pregnant that are not documented and have an SSN. So they can leave that blank on SSN and just write a note. I would suggest uploading a note saying that I don't have a social security number, so they don't think you're not providing it. It's just a factor that you don't have it. There are certain programs that could, at some instances, that people could be eligible for, and they don't have SSNs.
Yeah, that's totally true. There's a lot of different types of immigration statuses that are still eligible for Medicaid and CHIP, even if they don't have a social security number. So we're actually going to cover a lot of the immigrant access eligibility during our session tomorrow morning. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Amy, and I welcome anybody with questions to go ahead and please put those in the Q&A just so that we can make sure your questions get asked. But I'll hand it back over to Amy for now.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I'm going to tell you, Tess lives with George. So George, they're just roommates, they split costs and so forth, and George is there, and the state needs to know that Tess lives with him, but other people living in the household are people that you are not applying for. So they're not mandatory people that have to be together. And George isn't, he's a friend. And so this is actually asking, is there someone else that you're living with that are not on the application? And yes, there are. So we've got George Jones, who is not related to Tess and has his birth date. We have to enter his birth date. And for the most part, unless they identify that it's a mandatory person, that's all the information we'll have to provide on George. There might be a note to indicate if he pays her rent or pays part of it that comes from George. But as far as completing the application and filling in the blanks, that's all that would be required above George right now. All right. Let's look at the next questions. Information about people in the home. Does a child applying for healthcare travel with a family member who is a migrant farm worker? I love migrant farm workers. I actually used to live in West Texas, and there were a lot of migrant farm workers that worked out there in the cotton fields. So this is just specifically important because this may be an individual that needs Medicaid, but they might not need to be on a managed care case that would be specific to a central area, because some managed care programs don't cover all parts of the state. So that's why that's asking that. But TESS doesn't have anyone, so that we're okay. And they're asking about applying for benefits for somebody having a disability. And there's not a disability here. Pregnant's not always a disability. It can be potentially with complications, but there's not. And there's a reason. That's to allow HHSC to know if there's someone that may allow them to have certain tests for eligibility applicable. Just like, I'll give you an example. I am over 60. Don't ask me how much over 60, but I am. And so there's some qualifications for a person over 60 that other individuals that are less than 60 might get. For instance, a medical deduction. Well, a date of birth will clarify for me, but nothing else would tell someone if there's someone with a disability in the household. So that's why they're asking. All right. When people break program rules, they become disqualified, and people are disqualified are sent a letter and told that they can't get cash help, TANF, or benefits for SNAP. So now they're asking us, is there anyone disqualified in your household from getting cash or food benefits in the United States? And that's called a disqualified program violator. And so in this case, it is a national program. Funding from SNAP is from the federal government, and that's why it would apply from one state to the next. So in this case, TESS is not disqualified for intentional program violation. So we're going to mark it no. But individuals that have been disqualified for intentional program violation, they know they've had a letter, and that is something that's very crucial to mark that correctly, because that person will not get benefits. But if they live with other individuals that will, income and so forth may be counted and prorated. All right. On the medical side, it's asking here, and this is really cool. Is there a situation where with health coverage for future years, will you allow HHSC to use data facts they have, including tax returns, to help determine your eligibility with your renewal letter? And if you agree, you can mark it. Let's show the options. Here we've marked it yes for TESS because she was agreeable for 1 year, but you can actually indicate so for up to 5, or indicate you're not interested in doing that. All right, but she's good for yes for 1 year because she's only pregnant about a year. And going on, this is information about the managed healthcare organizations. And this is information that goes from tiers, the eligibility system HHSC has, directly to the managed care providers. So important information. And we are going to indicate, same as with HHSC, they can contact TESS with English. And we give this information directly to managed care. So you're repeating it, yes, but it goes somewhere else. And the preferred method would be by phone or text message for TESS, or by email. And we're giving them all the information necessary to do that communication. All right, let's go on next. Emergency help, emergency SNAP. These are questions that will help screen an individual to see if they're eligible for what are called emergency benefits or expedited benefits. They try and process these quicker, and this helps them determine this, and it actually brings it to the front of the queue for the SNAP workers at HHSC. One of the requirements that can automatically make you expedited is by being a migrant or seasonal farm worker. And these individuals can get expedite, but they only get one, maybe combined allotment of 2 months of benefits at a time. Or you can have $100 or less in available cash and bank accounts and expect to earn less than $150 a month. So that's pretty low income and situation. So we're looking at that. And also, if they have cost for housing and utilities that are more than the cash, their bank accounts, and income expected for the month. So those are all the screenables for expedite. So we're marking, Tess is not a migrant worker, so we're gonna mark her no. Does she have any money in the bank or cash? Yes, she does. She has a bank account, I believe, of $50 in it. And does she expect to receive income this month? She does. She's working. Remember, I told you she works at Kroger. So she's going to get about $1,500 per month or this month. This is all about the month of application. And does anyone in the home pay for costs for housing and utilities? And the answer is yes. And the amount is $1,010. Her income and assets are higher than this. So I'm going to basically tell you she's not expedited. Her case will be worked on a first come, first served basis. And there's a question here about being pregnant. And yes, she is. So she's entering her expected due date. She's getting a baby in February, more than likely. And if you mistype it, you can go in and edit it. Or if you put it under a pregnancy under a wrong person, you can edit it because sometimes that happens. All right. And if she knew the father and so forth, she could indicate it there. But let's go on. And she has indicated that at this time she's applying for Healthy Pregnant Women's Medicaid. And so she does not need to apply for Healthy Texas Women's Program. Okay. Simply because she'll have, hopefully, Pregnant Women's Medicaid. Then it asks, is anyone active duty military? And that's important. And so at this point, Tess is not in the National Guard or the reserves. She's not active military, so we're marking it no for her. She's indicated she's not in any military branch or reserves.
Hey, Amy, we had a couple of questions about households. Do you mind if I go ahead and ask them?
That would be beautiful.
Yeah, so one question, you added George into the application. Is that okay if he's the father of the unborn, but they're not married?
You know, that's a good question. At the time, if you've got a pregnant woman, and I'm going to assume George is the boyfriend, there is no legal responsibility. Maybe George works all nights and they are keeping their finances separate. And right now there's no child in the case. So yes, Tess can apply separately if he were to be the father. Now there's another place there earlier that we could have marked if he were the father, but George is not the father for this particular case. But if it were, they can apply separately, but I will share. Remember, children and parents have to be together. So as soon as that baby's born, they're going to need to report a change and they're going to have to look at the household all together. So that changes life when you have a common child. But George isn't the daddy, so we're okay on this one.
All right, a little bit of a different scenario. But what if we've got a young couple, Tess and George, they're in their 20s, and they're living with George's mom. Do they apply for SNAP separately, or can they be on the same case if Tess also wants to apply for pregnancy Medicaid?
Oh, that's an excellent one. You know, the question here is, and I'm going to tell you that in my scenario and my answer, they may be living with his parents, I think is what you said. But let's say they're 22. All right. They are 22 and they want to apply together because they want to purchase and prepare their food together. No child yet. They can choose to be together because they plan to purchase and prepare. And they plan to purchase and prepare separately from his parents simply because they don't like the same foods. You know, that happens. And they will be their own little intimate family in the future. So yeah, they can apply separately from his parents as long as they're 22 or older. Or once that baby's born, that also changes things. So definitely they can apply on their own if they're 22 and above. And once the baby's born, they can also be a separate household from the parents.
But what if they're only 20 and they're not quite 22 yet?
That gets a little more complicated. I knew you were going to bring that up. Actually, that's kind of an interesting one. I think I would educate the household. I would educate the client and her boyfriend that at this point, if a child lives with his parents and has no child of their own, and they're under 22, that particular person has to be a part of his household with the parents. That's just policy for SNAP. However, that does not mean the girlfriend has to be. She could apply on her own because she has the ability to be, let's say if she's 20, she's not under parental control. She's an adult. She's not living with her parents. So she could apply on her own. And with the hopes of once they have a common child, then they both could apply separately. They could add him to the case once the baby's born.
All right, another type of household question, and I'm only bringing these up now because we're wrapping up the household section. What if we have a 16-year-old who is currently pregnant, but it doesn't live with her parents anymore? Can she apply to SNAP on her own?
You know, if she doesn't live with her parents and she's not under parental control, she can. If she's living with someone that let's say she lives with me, 16-year-old. If I let her go and come and say she's just got to keep everything neat, she's got to figure out how to get her own food, I don't consider her my child or she's not under my rules, she could apply on her own.
If she applies on her own, she can't be on anyone else's case, right?
That's right. If she's already on someone else's case, she's going to have to report the change that she's no longer living with them. And she can report that. And then they will, of course, have to take adverse action and give adverse action to the household that she's on. And once she's off that other case, then she might initially get denied while they take care of getting her removed from the other case, because they can only leave an application open for so long waiting on that, because you cannot get SNAP on 2 cases in the same month. So they'll have to take care of that. And then potentially once that's taken care of, she could apply on her own.
Right. One last question for this section. This question about military active duty. Does this apply to any family member, even if they don't live in the same home?
Actually, it does not. This is the immediate people that are applying for SNAP and Medicaid.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple other questions lined up, but I'm going to hold those for another stopping point. And I invite y'all to keep those questions coming so Amy can get to them. And I'll hand it back over to Amy and Leyda.
Sure, thank you. All right, we were going to proceed in our application. And let's see what we've got. We're going to check what we've got test applying for, and we're applying for SNAP and pregnant women's Medicaid. And at this time, that's all that we've got marked. This is just a validation of what Tess really wants to apply for. It's like a last chance to change it. And it's really not the last chance, but it's in this application, we're confirming this is correct. So we're going to mark it complete. And we can proceed. All right. This is where we can validate Tess account. That's her first name and last name. Remember her information. So we're marking it. We, of course, are not putting a social security number where you can see it because it's confidential. And her home number is also confidential, but we wanted to have some information for you to see. She is single, never married. So we're going to mark that. There's options there. Can you show the options, Leyda? Divorced, legally separated. And legally separated means you've gone through the court and identified that you are no longer living as husband and wife, although you're officially still married. Got lots of issues, different options there. And separated would mean I'm just not living with my husband, but we haven't gone to the court to identify that before the state. So Tess is a single, never married person. So that's what we're going to mark her. And Tess age 18 or younger? She is not. She is an adult. So we're going to mark that no. And was Tess in foster care at the age of 18 or older? We're going to mark it no. But the reason that is there is it helps HHSC to identify that there are certain individuals that have been in foster care that are no longer in foster care that might be eligible for Medicaid up to the age of 25. So it's an important thing to ask people. And we make sure when we're doing application assist, we ask each question because we can't answer for someone. So we're making sure we're asking the individual because that's one that's not a lot of people know about. Medicaid for a former foster care individual. So really important. All right. And then there's information about going to school, and Tess is not going to school at this time. Then we get into race and ethnicity. She's white, and we are going to indicate she is not Latino or Hispanic. And she does live in Texas, and she plans to stay. She wants her baby to be born in Texas. And in this case, she is marking that she is a U.S. citizen. All right. Does she have special needs? Is she a child that has special care needs, like home health and so forth? And she is not. Again, the state is double checking to see if Tess has a disability. And then asking about, is she pregnant or has been pregnant in the last 12 months? And remember, I mentioned earlier about you can potentially have unpaid medical bills in the 3 months before someone applies. And so this is very important to answer this correctly. And they ask when does pregnancy end? Because there are months after the application that individuals that are pregnant can continue to get Medicaid. So that ending date, if someone had been pregnant in the last 12 months, is very crucial. Legal matters. Let's take a look. Yes, my favorite. Has Tess been convicted of a felony for conduct that took place after August 22nd, 1996 and involved illegal drugs? No, but let's see. Let me just ask you, let's look at something. Let's say she did. Yes. Then it asks them further because there's been changes in policy. Has Tess been on parole or under community supervision for a felony drug conviction on or after September 1, 2015? Important. So if the answer is yes, we might have eligibility in one way, or if it's no, another. So let's go back and not answer these because Tess doesn't have a conviction, but that will set tiers up to help determine the situation for Tess's household. But we're going to mark it no and complete this section. All right, let's view her information. We've got, she pays rent. And does anyone else pay information or anyone pay the cost? And what does she pay? So she pays $800 a month rents. She's renting, so she doesn't have taxes on her home. She pays water and sewer. And we've entered the amounts for electricity as well. Natural gas or propane. Usually that's people that live in the country, and she lives in Plano, so we're not going to probably have that right now. We're entering the phone number or phone cost, excuse me. And she does have a phone, and she doesn't have home insurance. That's usually what you have to buy to protect a mortgage. And then other expenses. She does have food cost and other expenses totaling $150. And let me explain, this is not all used to deduct for her income, but it allows HHSC to figure out how she manages her money. And you have to be able to explain how you manage, or if you right now have just had a hardship and you lost all your income, you might have been able to manage before, but you're here now because you need help. And then you're gonna have to explain how you will figure it out for the future. And that might be, I'm looking for a job. I will share, if someone were to answer, God provides, then that's good. But we're gonna need a note from whoever God has given you to help. Like if they help pay the rent, if it's Catholic Charities, we're gonna need to get a note to upload to show that. So does anyone not on your case and not living in your household help pay for these? The answer is no. So let's go on. Okay, we are at money coming into the household, and I'm going to stay on with you, but we're going to let Leyda proceed a little bit so we can share the responsibility here, and I'll help questions if we need to.
Thank you, Amy. So I'll be taking it over from here. So we're going to proceed with Ms. Test, and we're going to take a look at the money coming into the home. Okay, so at the very top, you'll see that it is going to ask you these two questions here. So the total amount of money that Test expects to get this year. A lot of people may not know this right off the bat, so definitely just enter to the best of your knowledge. And a lot of people may not know how much money they expect to receive the following year. It is okay to leave these blank if you don't know the answer right then and there. What's really gonna help determine eligibility is going to be the information that we enter for the current income or lack thereof. So for Ms. Test, she is currently working right now. She's got her job at Kroger. So we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at it. Whenever you're entering money coming into the home, it is going to allow you to enter it under one of these three sections. So the first one is going to be a job. Second one is going to be self-employment, and then training is the third. Really, the two most popular options are going to be either the income coming into the home is going to be considered a job, or self-employment. So the way to best determine which category it falls under, a job is going to be anywhere where when you receive the payment, you have taxes taken out of that pay. I'm sure many of you have seen your paychecks. You get those nice taxes taken out, FICA, Social Security, things like that. So if you have those taken out of the pay, that is going to be considered a job. Self-employment is going to be anything that is most relatable to like cash, or where payment is made and there's no taxes taken out at that moment of payment. A lot of popular jobs that fall into this category would be like Lyft drivers, Uber Eats, even for the homeless population, if they panhandle, so if they ask for money like on the side of the road to, you know, grab a meal or something, that is considered self-employment because it's a cash payment that they're receiving at that time. And the last category is going to be training. So if you receive any payment for a training period in a job. Now for the job details, you are going to need to enter how many hours were worked for that payment. If you're able to see the pay stub at that time, try and get the information from the most recent pay. So we're going to want to indicate how many hours were worked for that particular pay stub. For Ms. Test, it was 25 hours. And the last amount paid, and this is going to be before taxes and other deductions. So it's going to be the gross pay, not what hits her bank account, but the pay that she receives before those taxes are taken out. So she made $375 for that payment. And she started this job back in May of 2023. So she's been there about 5 months. And she just got her last paycheck on the 6th of this month. So you're going to want to indicate when they started and when they got the last payment date. Reason for the start date is you may have an individual who just started a job and they haven't received their first paycheck. They may not be able to answer these questions because they haven't gotten that first payment yet. So we really want to make sure we fill this out as best as possible. So we'll put in the start date for that and the last payment date. So we can indicate that that is in fact the most recent payment. Next question is going to ask, list the person or the employer that paid the money. For the scenario, she works at Kroger's. And how often are you paid? So that's going to be once a week. So there are several options to choose from on here. Once a week, every 2 weeks, monthly. We're really going to want to make sure we put that information in there accurately, because that is what HHSC is going to use to determine or to calculate the income for that individual for that month. This would be radically different if, she only received $375 for the month rather than the week. So definitely just double check whatever you put in that option. And is the individual still working at this job? Yes, she's still working here. If she weren't, you could go ahead and indicate no. That's also going to be very important because, again, Health and Human Services is going to calculate the income that you're going to receive for the application month. So for this current month, if the income was terminated, they're going to know that you're no longer going to be receiving those payments. So the income calculations would be very different. But for the scenario, she's still working here. And next, we'll come down to pre-tax contributions. So if your job takes out any money from your paychecks, those are considered pre-tax contributions. And anything that can fall under this category would be for retirement savings, medical insurance premiums, health savings account, dependent care expenses, commuter expenses, or life insurance premiums. Now, I'll say for like childcare, dependent care expenses, this is not going to be you like paying the child care after you receive your paycheck. This is if you have those expenses taken out directly from your pay. Same thing for medical insurance premiums. If you are eligible to receive medical insurance from your employer, then really want to put in those pre-tax contributions. So how much are you paying for that health insurance premium per pay period? How often is it contributed? And what is the last date that it was contributed? So Ms. Tess right now, she's only part-time. She's not eligible for health insurance premiums. So we went ahead and left that information blank. And when we move down here, we have the employer details. This is all information that you'll find on the pay stub. Employer identification number. You may not find that on every single pay stub. It kind of just depends on the company, on the software that they use, but you can certainly find the employer address, the city, state, zip code, and if possible, put in the phone number for that as well. HHSC may use that phone number to verify the income or the terminated income for that person. Last question is employer insurance details. So does this employer offer health insurance that Tess can get now or within the next 3 months? We went ahead and selected no, simply because, again, Ms. Tess is only a part-time employee, so she's not eligible for those benefits. Once you enter all of that information, you can go ahead and click complete. If she had additional jobs, anything like that, you would just go ahead and select the add money option and enter the information for the second or the third employment. But for the scenario, we'll go ahead and click complete. And we'll move on to other money sources. So other money sources is going to be any money that doesn't come from earned income or doesn't come from a job, essentially. So child support, alimony, dividends, Social Security, anything that didn't come from a job or from working for it, we're going to place here. So we'll actually take a quick look at this. For Ms. Tess, we didn't have any other money coming into the home, but we'll take a quick look just so you can kind of see what that looks like. So you would just add the other money in the home, and you could select the type of money that it was. So if she had disability insurance, no interest, anything like that, you would just put in the type of money she was receiving, the name of the person or the company that was giving her the money, a claim number if it applies, how much she was receiving, how often, and the date of the last payment. But we'll go ahead and cancel this out, and we'll click no because she's not receiving any other income at this time. We'll click next. So for this section, this is going to be things that Test has. So HHSC wants to know about vehicles, properties that each person pays for or owns. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that. Does Test own, or is Test paying for a car, truck, boat, motorcycle, or other? Yes, she does have a mode of transportation to get to work. So we've already gone ahead and inserted that information here. So we'll actually go ahead and take a look at it. So we noted that it will ask you the type of vehicle. So this is where you'll select what type of vehicle it is, whether it's a car, truck, trailer, or other. The make, the model, the year of that vehicle. And what is the total value for that? Best way to kind of think about it is like Kelly Blue Book value, or if the vehicle sold today, what do you think is the value of it? What would it sell for? So that kind of gives you the value of the vehicle. And then how much money is still owed on it. So if there's money still owed on it, Health and Human Services is going to know you're most likely making a car note payment. So it's going to be really important to put in how much money is still owed on it. For this particular vehicle, she already owns it, so she's not making any payments on it. And it's also important to note, this is only going to be for vehicles that are under Test's name. So if it's registered to her, or if if the loan is out in her name, those are the vehicles that we're going to place on here. Next question, is this vehicle used for a person with a disability? No, we've already determined Test does not have a disability, so we went ahead and selected no. And is there more than one person listed as an owner or a co-owner? Let's just say Ms. Test had taken out this car with her mom. Maybe she didn't have any credit at the time. She couldn't get the vehicle on her own. You would go ahead and click yes, and you would add the information for that co-owner. But for the scenario, Ms. Tess bought the car on her own. She doesn't owe anything. So we're going to go ahead and add that vehicle to her case. If she had any others, then you would just go ahead and add a vehicle for each individual item that she owns. Does Tess own or share ownership in a home or property, including mobile homes? We've already determined she rents a house with George. So at this time, she doesn't own or share ownership in any homes or properties. And again, if she did, then you would just add the information for that property. And does Tess have a life estate or a remainder interest in property? Went ahead and selected no. Life estate is one of those items that's a very particular situation. If you're in a life estate situation, you'll know. So we're going to go ahead and click complete. And we'll move on to the next section. So this is going to be for accounts and expenses. This is where Health and Human Services is going to take a look at the resources that you may have. So any bank accounts, stocks, life insurance, things of that nature. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So question one is, does Tess own, co-own, pay for, or is an authorized signer for an item such as cash, bank accounts, life settlements, savings bonds, stocks, mutual funds, or others? So if Tess owns any of these items, we would go ahead and add an account for each individual item that she owns. We're actually going to take a look at this item right here, which is going to be a checking account. So we indicated at the beginning she did have $50 on her person or on cash checking account. So we did indicate the value here on the type of account or item that it was. So most scenarios, people will have a checking account and a savings account. You would have to make an individual item for one for the checking and then one for the savings. We didn't have an account number, so we didn't put an account number in here. And then it'll ask you the name of the bank or the company to contact about the item. Ms. Tess has a checking account with Bank of America. At the time of the application, we didn't have the address for the bank, but you can usually just Google the information and you can get the address for that bank or that company. And lastly, it'll ask you, is there more than one person listed as an owner or a co-owner? If there was someone else listed on this account, you would go ahead and indicate yes, and you would add the information for that second individual that has their name linked to that particular account. But for the scenario, she's the sole owner of this checking account, so we're going to go ahead and add that information. And again, if she had a savings account along with that checking, we would just go ahead and add that additional item on here. So we'll move down here to assets. Does Tess have life insurance? We went ahead and put in no. She's young, she hasn't thought about that yet. So we went ahead and indicated no, but again, if the individual does have life insurance, then you would just go ahead and add that information on there. Additional items they may need to know about. Does Tess have any costs for education or school? No, she does. She's not going to school right now, so she doesn't have any of those types of costs. Does Tess have any costs for things such as educator expenses, health savings accounts, or moving? No, she doesn't have any of those costs at this time. If you ever have questions or just really don't understand what type of cost these could entail, you can hover over the little information icon, and that'll give you some more information on what those items are considered. And does Tess have any cost to take care of others? At this time, she doesn't. If she did, this would be, so things that fall under this particular category would be like child care, alimony, adult care. So she will probably have child care expenses in the future. This is where you would go ahead and indicate that information. We're going to go
There
ahead
we
and
go.
continue. Yes.
We've got a couple of questions about money, if I could ask you them
Yeah.
real quick. And I know we're running a little bit low on time, so I'll try to keep it speedy. Going back to when you were talking about child support, if someone's supposed to be receiving child support, but the other parent isn't actually paying it, do they still list that money on the application?
So you still want to list that on the application. If it's court ordered child support, so that's going to go through the Texas Attorney General. And really, I guess it just depends on which state, because it may not have originally been from Texas, but y'all, HHSC they can see that information. You still want to list it. But when you list it, if you haven't received a payment for, let's say, some months, or I've had situations where people receive only like $20 when the payment's supposed to be much higher, indicate that on the application that you only received the $20 and when was the last payment date. Or if you're not receiving anything at all, still add it, but go ahead and just put 0 for the amount, because you're not actually receiving anything from that child support.
Thank you. Can you leave the bank account number blank, or do you have to disclose that number?
So that's a really good question. You can leave it blank. You can leave the information blank, but Health and Human Services, if they have to verify, because they may not do this with all applications, it really kind of comes down to who's processing the case and how much money you have in that account. If you have anything over $1,000, typically that will raise a flag for Health and Human Services to verify that information. So even if you don't put the account number on there, they may just ask you as a follow-up to provide bank statements for that account. So just keep that in mind. You can leave it blank, but they may follow up with a request for bank statements.
And one more money question. If Tess is on her parents' account, how would you handle that?
So if Tess is on her parents' account, that is really going to depend on, it kind of just depends on how the account is set up. If she has access to that money, so if she's a co-owner, we still have to put that account on the application, even if she's not the primary owner. What Health and Human Services looks at is, does that individual have access to those funds? Can they access that as a resource or as cash? If they are a co-owner, that account does have to be listed on there. Really, the only way to negate that is if her parents would take her off of the account.
Thank you, Leyda. I know we're running a little bit low on time, but I still encourage people to put their questions in the Q&A. If we don't get to your questions, we can follow up with you afterwards, as long as we have your name. But I'll hand it back over to Leyda.
No problem. And we're gonna make it all the way to the end, guys. So we're gonna take a look at the past income section. So for these particular questions, it asks, is Tess getting any cash help, food, or healthcare benefits from another state? There is a very popular belief that these benefits are just like transferable. They are not. If you have anyone that comes from out of state and they have benefits in, let's say, Louisiana, they have to cancel those benefits in their previous state, and then they can apply in Texas. The benefits do not transfer. Each state has their own rules and regulations to determine eligibility, so they do have to apply in the state of Texas. For this particular scenario, Ms. Tess is not getting any cash help, food, or healthcare benefits from another state. And money from other programs. So is Tess waiting on an answer for an application for one of the programs listed below? We indicated no, but if she were waiting on a response for a benefit from Social Security or for SSI, maybe she applied for unemployment compensation. This is where you would indicate the benefit that she applied for. And this is really just to let HHSC know that they applied for that benefit, but they don't know at this time whether or not they're actually going to receive that as income. So this is just letting them know that we've applied, but we don't quite have that answer yet. Now does TES get any money or benefits now that they should have gotten in the past? We went ahead and put in no, but it does give you some examples down here. So it's really just anything that you're now getting paid for for benefits that you should have gotten like in the past, maybe 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Maybe you applied for a benefit and you received one lump sum because you were because they did back pay. But for this scenario, Ms. Tess has not applied for anything. We're going to go ahead and click complete. And for tax return status, so this is mainly for the medical benefits. So again, if we kind of think back to how Tess gave HHSC permission to view her income tax statements for the year to automatically renew those benefits, this is kind of where they get that information from. First question is, does Tess plan to file federal income tax return next year? So yes, she does. She's working this year. She's going to have to file income tax. So we went ahead and indicated yes. And will she file with the spouse? So no, Tess doesn't know the father of the child. So right now, plans for her future, she's going to be a single mom. So we went ahead and indicated no. And will Tess claim any dependents on their tax return? So we still went ahead and put in no for this. Her due date is not until next year. So her baby won't be born until 2024. So she would actually put the baby on the taxes for that following year. And will someone claim Tess on their tax return? No, she's independent. She handles her own bills. So no one's going to claim her on their tax returns. Once you answer those, we're going to go ahead and click complete. And now we got to the insurance and bills section. So this is going to be insurance and bills for Tess. First question is going to be, does Tess get Medicare? No, she doesn't get any Medicare right now. She's far too young. So we went ahead and indicated no. In the last 3 months, have you had any health insurance or have you had any health insurance other than Medicare, Medicaid, or CHIP? No, at this time, she doesn't have any other health insurance. Again, she's only part-time at Kroger. She's not eligible for their insurance, which is why she's applying for the pregnancy Medicaid. And did Tess pay any medical or dental bills in the past year? No, she hasn't made any payments because she hasn't gone to go get her checkups or gone to any medical professionals. And this is going to be a very important question for this particular program. So does Tess have any medical bills from services in the past 3 months? And y'all, this is very important because if Tess had any medical bills from within the last 3 months, if she qualifies for benefits for Medicaid, they can go back up to 3 months to help pay for those services that are not paid for yet. So that is going to be very important. Let's say she went to the hospital because she didn't know she was pregnant. She was having some type of emergency. She went to the hospital. She didn't have any health insurance coverage. And maybe this was just 2 weeks ago. We would go ahead and add that information here. And it's going to be for each individual bill. We actually did add a doctor's note on here because she did go to the doctor. And it'll ask you what the type of bill is, whether it was a doctor, hospital, medicine, or other, how much the amount of the bill, how much was paid. So she didn't have the money to pay it, so she didn't pay anything at the time of service. What the date of service was. So if we look at this, this was in September, so she's still within that last 3-month period. And who provided the medical service? This would be like the name of the provider or the hospital, the clinic, and the address for that location. So once you indicate that, you'll go ahead and update it, and you'll add each of the bills if she has any other pending bills for the last 3 months. Once we add that, we're going to go ahead and click complete. Next, and the last question is going to be, do you want to register to vote? So if you're not registered to vote where you live now, would you like to apply to register to vote here today? This does not affect eligibility, so please don't be afraid to put either yes or no. But for this scenario, Miss Tested, she's already registered. She doesn't, she's already registered, so she went ahead and selected now. We'll click complete. And we have reached the end of the application. So this is the portion where you're going to go ahead and upload files. All you have to do is you just select the browse for file, and you can either find the pictures or files that you need to upload. But this is where we're going to send all of our verification documents. So we want to make sure that when Health and Human Services receives this, we're not being asked to provide anything else. So you want to upload your ID, proof of address, proof of income. So Ms. Tess does work. She gets paid weekly. We want to provide at least the last the four most recent pay stubs for her. And again, if she has any verification for pregnancy, if she has we know she went to the doctor, so she most likely received a note saying that she was pregnant. We'll go ahead and upload that as well. And as well as the pending medical bill. So again, we want to make sure that if she can have that doctor service covered for when she went to the doctor last month, that we go ahead and upload that bill as well. Again, we just want to make sure that we're covering all of our bases. So we'll want to upload all of those documents with the application. And if you can't upload them at that time, you can still fax them in, you can still send them via mail, but upload it on your taxes benefits, that's onto your individual account. That's going to be the best way to send Health and Human Services those documents. Once you get that uploaded, you'll click next. You can check your answers. We always recommend that you go ahead and check your answers. So things like the home address, the phone number, and the benefits that the person applied for. You just want to make sure all of that information is good. And this is really the end of the application. This checkbox, if you're assisting someone, it's so important that they know before they submit that final signature, that they understand that all of the answers that they have provided for the application are true to the best of their knowledge. We just need to make sure that everyone who is being assisted understands that. And again, do you want a copy of the form mailed to you? And do you want a receipt mailed to you? So these are optional. Of course, you can have the copy and the receipt mailed to you. And once you click next, that's it. That's the end of the application. I would definitely love to leave some time for the last questions. Do we have some more questions?
Yes, actually, what I think I'll do next is ask 1 or 2 questions, see if we have time for them, and then I'll do some of our housekeeping, including our raffle. And then if Amy and Leyda can't hang out for a little bit longer, we can see if we can get to some more questions, but if not, we can also follow up with people on those questions. So one question that came on pretty early in the session is, if a client does receive a denial for SNAP, is there a waiting period before they can reapply?
There is not a waiting period before they need to reapply. As soon as the denial letter comes in the mail, they can apply right then and there. There's no waiting period, no penalty. The only situation where there might be a waiting period would be if someone broke program rules. That individual would be informed that they could not apply for, it could be 30 days, it could be 60 days, depending on which stage of breaking rules that they're at. But as far as a regular denial for documents not being received or anything like that, there's no waiting period.
Can I make a comment there?
Mhm.
In an ideal world, if, let's say, an application was pended on the 10th day after they applied and they were asked to provide information, they'd be given 10 days from that date. And in reality, that's day 20 of an application. If they get denied at that point, they have up until the 60th day from the file date to provide that information and get benefits. So sometimes you can actually, and it will tell you, you have until this date to provide this information. You don't have to reapply. You just have to follow through and get the information that HHSC asked for.
Thank you, Amy. I'm not sure if either of you are able to answer this next question, but I know it's not a secret or a surprise. That right now, people that are applying are seeing their applications take a really long time to get processed. Do y'all have any insight as to why some applications might just be sitting for months before they're reviewed?
Yes, HHSC has had an overwhelmingly increase of workload due to the Medicaid unwinding. And so that has been a very challenging thing for them. And I would encourage them to watch their mail, check their YTB managed case activity on their yourtexasbenefits.com app or the mobile app, just to see if there's any communication. But the increase of the work with the Medicaid unwinding and the ending of the federal health emergency has really impacted HHSC's ability to be as timely as they like to be. So that is a big part of the workload right now.
Thank you, Amy. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and ask if we can launch our next poll. And I'll hand it over to Travis momentarily to do the raffle. And then I'll see if Amy and Leyda can come back to see if we can take through some more of these questions. So you should see, Leyda, would you mind going ahead and stop sharing your screen? Thank you. So you should see a poll on your screen asking you about what you learned during the session. The question is, and the responses are in English and then Spanish. So if you could go ahead and answer each of those questions, and at the bottom, make sure that you click on submit. And while you get those in, I am going to turn it over to Travis for, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn it over to Liz for our raffle.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Sincerely apologize if y'all hear noise in the background, but Perk's working from home. Okay, so the lucky winner for today's PM session is...
Liz, we can't see your screen right now.
Unfortunately. Denise Gomez. If you could confirm attendance in the chat by just dropping a quick "I'm here," that'd be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, we will respin.
I'm actually not seeing Denise in our participant panel.
Hi. One more time. Virginia Nunes.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Great. So I will take down your email. A $50 gift card. Thanks so much for attending.
thank you, Liz, for helping us run through that. Amy, Leyda, do y'all have a second to go through some more questions, or do y'all have to hop off?
Let's try a few more.
All right. If you're applying for emergency food stamps, do you get a card that same day?
Actually, no, as a routine, you don't. HHSC is working very hard to get those benefits out, but they are routinely mailing those out, and they're very quick to get them out. Their vendor sends those cards out. On a rare occasion, they might tell you to come to a local office, but as a rule, they're mailing those out to individuals. So you get them in a couple days.
All right. A little bit ago, we talked about how, there's really long delays right now with some applications and renewals. What should people do if they're still waiting and they have not gotten a notice saying that they're denied or accepted? Should they reapply?
Oh, please no. My suggestion is make sure your application is still online if you can see that. If you can't, you don't have a user account and you applied by paper, call 211 and ask them to ensure they can see the application. And as long as it's there and they can see it, then they know it's waiting and it's just a first come first serve process where HHSC is working those as quickly as they can. By reapplying while you've got an application pending, it can actually add to their workload and maybe slow the process down a little more. So as long as you can confirm or you've got a receipt showing you applied, then no, I would not encourage you to reapply unless you needed other services that you didn't apply initially for, because sometimes circumstances change. So if you needed to add or reapply for another program as well, yeah, then yes. But otherwise, I would encourage just be patient.
Yeah, good point. I know we have a couple of questions, and I'm gonna try to sort through the ones that I think might take a shorter amount of time to respond to, but the other ones we can follow up on those. One question that we got is right now some enrollment assisters are seeing when they are trying to help people renew or apply for benefits, that when they're trying to upload documents into the system, it's not always working. Do you have any recommendations on what to do if that occurs, any kind of workaround, so that we can make sure that the documents do get sent? But if it's just not working in the system, what would you recommend?
I would say from my perspective is if you can't get it to go on the initial try, I would save the application and potentially, if you have the client there with you, go ahead and restart your YTB. Sometimes it's a matter of getting a better connection. Check your connection for one. Clearing your cookies and cache are very important because sometimes that can affect your ability to upload. In addition, change your browser. Try your texasbenefits.com in a different browser, because those troubleshooting techniques really do help. If for some reason you can't get anything uploaded, then go ahead and submit the application and ensure that you fax those documents in for the client and include their name, social, and the submission ID on each faxed page so that it can be attached to that application as quickly as possible. Leyda, do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, so I found that sometimes when it gives you that error, you have to go ahead and submit the application. And on your Texas benefits, it actually gives you like a separate option to upload documents. I'll say like 90% of the time, if you go ahead and submit the application, you can just, while you're still in the account, go to the upload documents section and add the files from there. And most times that works. It's just for some reason, it gives you that error when you're doing it in the application.
So to confirm, if people cannot upload supporting documentation as part of the renewal or initial application, they can come back into your Texas benefits and upload those separately later. Perfect. I think I'm gonna go ahead and cut us off for now. I know we have some other questions that are really good questions, and I can promise to make sure to share these with Amy and Leyda to see if we can get some responses to these and make sure to share them with all the participants within today. And I thank you, Amy and Leyda, so much for joining us. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate you making the time to share your expertise with everybody. I am going to go ahead and close out this session, and I invite you to join us again tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m., where we'll spend a lot more time talking about immigrants and their access. Thank you.